So this is going to be a sort of rules overview, a couple of reminder points, and kind of clarity to do what I can to help for the second scenario, Mechage Countdown. Now, you're still going to need both books, obviously, because I'll be pulling up certain references, and I'll show you where in the books, well, booklets, they are. So let's take a look at what you get. So we'll take that out, take that out. So this is the unit that you get. Excuse me. You get the twin cannon and the personnel carrier. Now, from what I've done and played of the game, you're almost always going to have the personnel carrier. I'll go over all that sort of stuff. You can see that it's got all the usual stuff. No values have changed over there. This one has the slightly lower armor, which, in classic targeting from the bases and everything else, that's the side that's going to be targeted with one exception. I'll show you on that. You'll see a very low attack value over here in the personnel carrier. So you don't need a lot of firepower for the countdown scenario. So that low attack value is kind of like up there with targeting. It's like whether or not you can actually get the shot in. The damage value of 3 is perfectly fine. The big one here is the special, the ability to make 2 separate attacks. Now, whether or not you have, let me bring up the first one here, the heavy cannon, because that has barrage, which is 2 attacks. Whether or not you basically do want a cannon, and we'll go over why that is in a sec. We'll move this to the side and bring this guy up here. So, obviously this is a very different looking card than Varanor. It's not got the same stuff. It will start with the usual range at 6. Your goal is to take out both guns, and then to figure out, with scan, which building has the, I think it's the missile launch codes or something to that effect. It's a little blurry from my memory. Right here on the right-hand side, you have your cube, their cube will move down, showing what it's targeting, who's taking damage, those sorts of things. So, just by running down what happens, the countdown, you move that down. Now, the attack target, it's going to attack based off where it is. So its first shots are going to go at you, then the troops, then mines are going to go off, which basically they just auto hit. There's, the troops are just never safe. And then it rotates back up there. I'm going to try to keep the autofocus from killing everything. Now, when it does attack, it has 2 points per gun, 1 point per building. So its first attack is going to be an attack value of 10. Now, from reading through the rules, unlike Varanor, I cannot see anything that says that the base itself, I'm trying to think what to call it, has any sort of roll for lock-on. So it basically, as long as it has attack above your armor, or your defensive value, it's basically going to hit you. So that's kind of the way it is. You move on with that. Now, then as far as a scan log, you have the ability, and depending on how you're reading the rules, I have to emphasize I don't have clarity on that. You can scan a building instead of using a mech attack. So whenever you see that burst symbol on the mech side, you can scan and you roll a die. Whenever you roll a die, you take the value and you put one of the cubes down here. Now, once all 6 cubes, so you need to do a total of 6 scans, are together, because each one can have multiple values. You'll determine which building has the launch codes or program or whatever it is, and you can then send in the strike team, which, if you can see the tiny print up here, is you have to use an infantry attack. It gets +1 per rifleman that's still alive. You need a value of 6 or better, and if you fail that roll, you lose an infantry, and you can try again next turn. Now, the complications for this are going to be that you also have to destroy both guns, and obviously they have a value of 5. And so if you're just using the stock, you only have an attack value of 3. If you look at, let's try to bring these back for a sec. If you look at, I'm just using the stock one for this, for some people who only have one. There's only large targets, which means only your grenadiers can actually deal damage. So your problem is you have an attack value of 2, you have an attack value of 3, you have an attack value of 2 if both your guys are alive. So what that means is you're going to be doing a lot of chance rolls. Now, if you don't know what a chance roll is, let me bring up the official rules and show you. It's on this page here. See where it says attack roll? After you do the roll for lock-on, we'll discuss that in a second. If your damage is not equal or higher, you then can roll to see whether or not you get to deal the one damage. And so obviously it's blowing up a building, it's blowing up a gun. You're going to be doing a lot of chance rolls if you don't have higher values. So the problem just is you're going to almost be rolling twice just to blow up a building or a gun, and that's obviously going to be problematic for how this whole scenario is going to go. Because you need to beat that defense. Defense of 3 means your twin cannon can take out a building, but you got to get through those guns. So that's where I'd start talking about the heavy cannon, because the heavy cannon has an attack of 6. So if you have the Varanor scenario, I suggest taking the heavy cannon if you want a slightly easier game. Now, for all the stuff over here, bring that back into focus. You have the fact that the base, there it goes. You have the fact that the base is going to be having usually an attack of 10 on the first attempt. That means they're going to be taking 1-2 points away from you. Now, I'm just emphasizing rules because I want, since the rules are so condensed. You start with your damage cubes off. First point will go, let's say it hits here. Next point goes here. That's not a big deal. Your guys can go over, they can fix it, it'll go up. Once it crosses this threshold, it cannot be fixed further than that threshold. This takes away the special abilities of the side that's damaged. This lowers, the armor even further. That means you lose the game. So, what I want to emphasize, and this is the part where I have to say, I do not have rules that say one way or the other. I just want to try and translate and give my best opinion. When this says it takes away the special ability, I'm reading that as it takes away these. That would mean, in theory, that the reinforcement and cover fire ability could be shut down. Now, option 2, and I want to make sure that we understand that as an option 2, it could also just take away the ability to use this star special action, which means only the twin cannon, in theory, could be affected by that. That's until I can get further confirmation. I'll leave a note in the comments or the description if I can have that proven. I want you to know those are your two. That's the only vagary that I have. But your infantry are your bullets, and so you need them alive for when you do your final strike. Your engineers are obviously what fixes stuff, so you kind of need to do some infantry maintenance. That personnel carrier, why I say it's important is because you can get 3 infantry back. In the games I've played, I usually get to about 4, and then I'll drop them out and we go there. Otherwise, you're going to be losing a lot of troops, because let's look at and run the numbers real quick. Let me take that out. Bring this back into frame. There we go. They're going to attack the troops on one turn. Next turn, mines. It's just an auto kill. So it doesn't matter how good your troops' defensive value is, you're just going to lose a guy. So in theory, you're going to get shot by the guns. You're at range, 6. Next turn, range 5. Your infantry gets shot. Go to range 4. They get mined. So before you even get into a very high probability of blowing stuff up, you're probably losing 1 point off your mech. You're losing 2 of your infantry. Now, as far as what all this stuff means down here about the building and whatnot, they only deal 1 attack and they have 3 defense. Once the guns are dealt with, you can start blowing up buildings. Now, I'll explain why you want to do that and then also why you don't want to. You're getting 1 attack based off the number of buildings. So if you took out 2 buildings, its attack value is only 4. You take it to attack value 3 or attack value 2, you can start to keep your troops in better shape. You can keep your mech from being hit. Since there's no attack roll, the way I'm reading it is there's not going to be, it's not actually, you could make the argument that they're going to get the roll for chance, but it doesn't really seem to imply that. Now, why you do not want to attack the buildings, these values down here, so after you've done your 6 points of scan, that will determine which, building it's in. If you do not get 2 6s, the chances this building's going to be involved is very low. If you don't get, say 3 1s, this building is likely not going to be involved. So you can safely take out those 2 more often than not. It just gets dicier as you move in there. If you blow up the building that you later find out has the codes or whatever, then you lose the game as well. But that's one of those things where you won't actually know you've lost until you have all 6 scans. So that's kind of a trade-off there. The rules, they're clear enough. I want to make that. They're clear enough, but they're very specific, and you kind of have to almost know what you're looking for. So the difference from Varanor, I can bring up this guy real quick. When we had Varanor, it actually does a clear attack. It rolls for lock on. It does all that stuff. It basically acts like another unit. When we get to the base, it doesn't roll. It just has an attack value, and that's it. It's just basically, is it going to hit? Yes, no. That's the end of the story. Okay. Now, for range, it says you have to be, very clear in the book, it says you have to be in range 1 or 2 for your final strike with the team. It does not say anything about scanning at range. So what that means is, because you're going to have to roll for lock-on, which if you're not familiar, I'll go through it real quickly. When you go to shoot with your mech, any of the weapons, you'll have your range set to whatever value it is, 6 through 1. You have to roll a die that meets or exceeds that number. If it doesn't, you simply miss. There's no following through. So at the longer ranges, say 5 or 6, you might want to skip your mech attack and go straight into the scan. Sorry for the quick jump cut. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't misreading any rules. There is no mention of the base rolling for range. I mentioned that before, but the part I want to kind of fix is it says this part here, move target down. So if it attacks your mech, it rolls down here. If it attacks your infantry, it'll go down here. When it hits here, it immediately jumps up. So basically, the infantry are going to be hit all but twice in one turn. So it's going to be going very quickly, cutting through your troops, so you need to start blowing stuff up. There is no lock-on that I'm reading for whether or not you can scan a building at range 6. So you may want to be more efficient in your rolls, because your chances of beating both the lock-on and also being able to beat the chance die with the 2 units that you came with, it's a lot harder. Now, it also says that when you blow up a building, so there'll be a cube here that moves down. There's the countdown. When you blow up a building, this thing will jump off and kind of hover up here. Then next turn, when it does countdown, it jumps back to here. So you can actually, by blowing up buildings, buy yourself some extra turns. I've never used the 8 turns. I've used, I've gotten to about 2, and we've been fine. But, I also use the heavy cannon, so that's its own thing. The language isn't vague. My problems are, there's a lot of very specific things that need to be said or not said, and I'm trying to almost go verbatim. Because there's no roll for lock-on from the base, it doesn't say, roll for lock-on. It just says attack target. It doesn't say, worry about range or anything else. You're the one that has to worry about range. Apparently, they just sharpshoot from the gates. They just, always have a lock on you. So you have to mitigate how much damage you're taking, so on and so forth. Now, I want to bring up, where are they? Here we are. I'm going to bring up these guys for a quick little rule reminder, because if this is your only scenario, you might not remember this from the base rules. The parts I'm talking about come from this book. This book always comes with your package. Now, when you have an infantry, it has to be in one of these 4 positions. If your infantry is here, they get +1 to their lock-on roll. They add their defensive value, which you can see down here, is the number of shields according to their health. So if you have, say, 5 infantry, you have 1, 2, 3 defensive value. They will add their defensive value to this side when the base is shooting at you. So that means that if you have them over here, it's going to shoot over here. So if let's say this side's getting damaged, you throw them over there, then this side will get shot at. You can kind of pick the target that the base is going to shoot at. Obviously, that matters just depending on how things are going. The base is almost always going to be landing on one of the sides. You just kind of get to pick which one. They can only fix the side if the infantry are in these repair positions. You'll see there's a couple of ones, it takes a troop movement, and then, there they can repair, there they can repair, and add even more defensive value. It's just a game of balancing what side's taking damage. Are you fixing damage with your infantry? Are you possibly getting some extra shots on the buildings, the guns, whichever? The personnel don't do much until those guns are taken out. They're basically just fodder. You can lose all your infantry, but the problem then is you need to roll a natural 6 because you need your infantry for the strike. That's just the way things are. And it says right here on the back, there we go. You win if you launch the abort. If your infantry strength is reduced to 0, you lose. If your building you found is blown up, you lose. If you lose a whole side, you lose. So there's 3 ways to lose, only 1 way to win. That's really about it. Like I said, I'm mostly just trying to clarify some rules because the booklets are dense. They're not complicated, but rules are often mentioned once and not repeated or re-emphasized again. So I just want to make sure we kind of got the language out there. I'm hoping this helps you. I really like the Mechage system a lot. It's just you have to be extremely literal and kind of take your time to go through the checks of, all right, well, I get plus accuracy there. Which side is there? Which of these? And again, your defensive value for troops is the number of shields shown within the number of troops still alive. So they start at 4 defense if this is your stock, but the moment they lose 1 guy, they're already down to, 3 defense. So that's Mechage Countdown. Hopefully I helped. Who knows?